Welcome to Safe and Sound, and on today's edition we actually have Allison Hephner with the Navajo County Health Department. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's kind of interesting that this last time we were together we had our roles reversed here, and so I'm feeling a little nervous, but that's it. Just kidding. No.
I really like this side a lot.
But,
a lot less stress.
Yeah, but it's been fun becoming the host and enjoying. But we got something that's real important that is becoming a passion for you at this moment that we want to kind of discuss. So I'm going to let you introduce it.
Okay. So we went and we did our community health assessment, our community health improvement plan, and we've talked about that on this show before. And when that was complete, we had priorities identified, and there was substance abuse was a priority in our area. We had suicide, which was an issue with mental health. We had poverty, sexually transmitted diseases, and chronic disease. So we have those 5 major priorities that we're focusing on, being reactive to these situations.
Right, and it's crazy out there. All of those things that you just named off we're there.
Oh, and we're double that of what Arizona's seeing at the state or the United States. Our teen suicide rate is double that of the Arizona suicide rate, and in its teens. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have serious issues and serious priorities that we are being reactive to, and we are focusing on. And we're trying to currently we're managing situations. Somebody gets incarcerated, they go into jail, and then they can access these resources, and we try to provide them. How do we get them back into the community and make sure that they don't end up in jail again or do something bad again to get there. So we're managing that. So we're being reactive, and we're managing this.
But now, let me ask you this. Is reactive really the best way to take care of this and to cure the problem?
I'm so glad you asked. Well, here's the deal. When you're reactive and you manage the problem, what do you do about this group right here that grows up and gets in?
Right. Are they going to fall into the same trends? Yeah,
because there's nothing proactive to stop them. And we know we're both very passionate about prevention. It's kind of a thing that we share very, there's many like us, believe it or not. Proactive is harder.
Right.
It's harder, but the benefits outlast the reactive.
And I think a lot of it has to do with, one, understanding where all this stuff is coming from and starting from and the initial, to be able to, so all we're doing is just being reactive. But what starts it so that now, because you got to kind of understand the base root of the problem to be able to be proactive.
Exactly, and so I brought a video from David Vinciletti. He is a doctor who did a study 20 years ago, and it's adverse child experiences. And so I wanted the viewers to actually watch that video to get a true understanding, because this is the problem and the solution to every single one of those issues that I identified that's happening in Navajo County. Now there's other issues, homelessness, housing, not having a house, there's incarceration, there's all these other issues that we see, but we picked the top 5 because that's a lot to swallow.
Right, you got to start somewhere, and you don't want to take off, like you say, like how do you get rid of the elephant, or how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
That's right.
But the cool thing about ACEs, it's not actually a cool thing, but it is, because we found that if we are able to support this structure, we will take care of all of that. So watch the video, please pay attention so that you can understand what ACEs is, and we'll talk about it.
All right, sounds great.
All right.
What we found in the ACE study, involving 17,500 middle-class adults, was that life experiences in childhood that are lost in time and then further protected by shame and by secrecy and by social taboos against inquiry into certain realms of human experience, that those life experiences play out powerfully and proportionately a half-century later in terms of emotional state, in terms of biomedical disease, in terms of life expectancy. In 1985, I first became interested in developmental life experiences in early childhood, really by accident. In the major obesity program we were running, a young woman came into the program. She was 28 years old and weighed 408 pounds, asked us if we could help her with her problem, and in 51 weeks took her from 408 to 132. And thought, well, my God, we've got this problem licked. This is going to be a world-famous department here. She maintained her weight at 132 for several weeks, and then in one 3-week period regained 37 pounds in 3 weeks, which I had not previously conceived as being physiologically possible. That was triggered by being sexually propositioned at work by a much older man, as she described him. And in short order, she was back over 400 pounds faster than she had lost the weight. I remember asking her why the extreme response. After initially claiming not to have any understanding of why the extreme response, ultimately she told me of a lengthy incest history with her grandfather from age 10 to age 21. Ultimately, it turned out that 55% of the people in our obesity program acknowledged a history of childhood sexual abuse. I mean, that obviously is not the only issue going on, but it was where we began. And as we went down that trail, then we discovered other forms of abuse, also growing up in massively dysfunctional households, etc. And the ACE study was really designed to see whether these things existed at all in a general population, and if so, how did they play out over time. We studied 10 categories of adverse life experience that were chosen because of their prevalence in the weight program: childhood sexual abuse, heavy-duty childhood physical abuse, I'm not talking spanking, major emotional abuse, recurrent humiliation, 2 categories of neglect, growing up in a home where one of the members of the household was chronically depressed, suicidal, mentally ill, or in the state hospital, growing up in a home without both biological parents, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was alcoholic or a drug user, growing up in a home where mother was beaten, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was imprisoned during your childhood or adolescence. Those were the 10 categories. In a middle-class population, 1 in 11 people has experienced 6 or more of those adverse life experiences in childhood. So this is very common, totally unrecognized. It was difficult for us to accept their commonness, but on the other hand, these are issues that most people never touch. And so who would know without routinely asking? But at a so-called ACE score 6, experiencing any 6 of the 10 categories that we studied, that person was 4,600% more likely to become an IV drug user than a person who had experienced none of those 10 categories. Okay? Now, you think you read in the newspaper the latest cancer scare of the week, prostate cancer or breast cancer increases 30% and everyone goes nuts. I'm talking 4,600% increase. The same ACE score of 6 produces a likelihood of attempting suicide that is between 3,100 and 5,000% greater than the likelihood of suicide attempts in someone with none of those life experiences. So the power of this relationship is enormous. So ultimately the question arises, how do life experiences in childhood end up with disease states a half century later? There are at least 2 big categories to account for that. One is through the use of various coping devices. One smokes to feel better, one overeats to feel better, one drinks to relax, etc. And those things carried out in heavy amounts have major destructive patterns, even though they may be immediately beneficial. The other broad category has to do with the effect of chronic major unrelieved stress on the workings of one's brain and central nervous system. In recent years, and this is relatively new, it's become clear that chronic major unrelieved stress can produce the release of pro-inflammatory chemicals in a person's body and also can suppress immune system function. Of the 10 categories that we studied, any 6 of them produces a shortening in life expectancy of almost 20 years. The magnitude of this problem is so huge, and the complexity of dealing with it after the fact is so huge, that realistically the only serious approach is going to have to involve primary prevention. No one knows how to do that, but it's the right question to focus on.
I mean, what are some of your thoughts on this?
So one of the reasons I picked that video is because I wanted the viewer to understand and the community to understand that that survey of that community was done in the middle class. And at first I was like, well, why didn't they do it? And, why are they leaving the people in poverty out? You think
Right.
that. But they did that specifically to show that ACEs is not just somebody who's poor. ACEs is not just somebody who's rich. ACEs affects everybody across the board. The other reason I picked that video is because he talks about chronic disease being influenced by a childhood experience. When he talks about that woman, and then that woman, after he dug a little bit deeper, he found that she was sexually assaulted as a child.
Right.
And she had gained all this weight. And because she's self-medicating, it makes her feel so comfortable, like he explains. Just like sometimes people are drinking because it takes the edge off. It's being proactive and identifying that that is an issue because of the way that they were raised.
And I like how he actually talked about when she lost all that weight, and then somebody sexually propositioned her, an elderly gentleman, and so it brought back everything and gained 37 pounds in 3 months' time. That's crazy.
She was re-traumatized.
Right. So they recognized that, hey, this is the trigger.
If that was a woman who hadn't experienced that as a child, the woman probably would have said something or just been like, whatever, and walked away and ignored it. But because that individual had experienced that at a younger age, it would limit her. And they say that anybody with 4 or more ACEs lived 20 years less than everybody else, which is sad.
Right.
And unfair.
And remind our viewers what ACEs stands for again.
Adverse child experiences.
Exactly.
So one of the things, there's many things to be how you
Right.
address adverse child experiences, but basically it's taking off the blinders, moving the denial. Oh, it's them over there. Oh, it's
Right.
them over there. Oh, it's the poor people. No, it's
Well,
not.
And then provide them tools.
Provide them tools and support.
Right.
So this is the exciting part, because I get it, you get it, most of us in the healthcare industry and in the community social service industry, we get it. We understand that ACEs correlates 100% with substance abuse, theft, suicide. You can keep going, everything there, all the bad, all the negative, all the things that are bringing the economy down. The fact that we can't, in this area, we're not blessed with workforce.
Right.
It's very difficult to find a workforce here because they're on welfare. Well, a lot of people on welfare are ACEs. A lot of people in businesses and business owners have ACEs. I mean, no one's can avoid it, really. So to explain ACEs a little bit more, when a child grows up, and here, this is the best way to put it because this is a brain connection. Nadine Burkaris, I think is her name. She is an MD, and she has
Okay.
a TED Talk if you look her up. And she talks about how when you're in the woods and you see a bear, you start to get that fight or flight. Maybe your pupils dilate and your
Hair stands up. On
hair
the back
stands
of
up,
your
yes,
head.
and you're
It's
just
like
you're ready.
You're freaking out.
You're like, whew, okay, I'm
Yeah.
ready. I can do this. And then you leave the forest, the bear goes away, and that feeling goes away. What happens if that bear came home every night? What happens to that child? Because that child can't leave. That child has to be there. So when that parent comes home every night and screams at that child, or that mother, hits her husband, or the father is shooting up, or the other uncle comes over and is sexually assaulting that child can't leave. That child goes into that fight or flight over and over and over, and eventually it becomes just...
They close off.
Yeah. There's nothing there. They go into their body and they ignore everything. And I've seen it in kids before, and I'm sure teachers
Right.
have seen this a lot. And it's heartbreaking to know that that child was ignored by our society because it's not our problem. Those children are suffering in silence. Well, now let's roll up our sleeves and give that child the support they need to grow up like every other kid.
And it's not like give them some pills,
No,
medications,
yeah.
and that kind of stuff.
And throw them to the side. Oh, that'll fix them.
Yeah, right.
No, it's about developing task force and an entire system that supports good family behavior and supports those families to be the best that they can be. So the cool thing here is First Things First is doing an early childhood conference, May 18th. And what's going to happen is they're bringing the speaker. His name's Dominic Capello, and he co-wrote the book Anna Age 8, which is a data-driven solution to this issue. Anna Age 8 is a very hard book to read at first because the gender has been changed, the name has been changed, but it's about a little boy in the book, or a little girl in the book, who was killed at 8 years old because of abuse. And that happens more than we're allowed to tell people.
Oh, yeah.
The community can't handle it, sensitive information. Happens way more than we're allowed to tell people, and in Navajo County.
Well, and how much of it really occurs and nobody ever knows anything about it.
Well, and everybody says, oh, it's them. And they would be so surprised to know it's not just them. It's all of us. That
Right.
And so it's a heartbreaking thing. So anyway, it goes into that and discusses why this happened. Where did we fail to stop this? And it comes out with, there's 10 task force. So anyways, First Things First is going to come and have this event, and Dominic's going to come speak at it.
Nice.
So Dominic's going to speak on the 18th as a keynote, and Jill Stamm, who talks about brain development, is going to come speak with him so that people can understand, you can understand how the environment affects you, the social determinant of health and life, and the quality of life that these kids have that is affecting them. But you have to also understand how the brain works and why that fight or flight after over every single day happening over and over and over eventually takes that child and makes them numb.
Right.
And then turns them into an alcoholic or an opioid addiction or obese or with certain other chronic disease, a smoker. So on Monday the 20th, Dominic's staying, and he is doing a community presentation. We're calling it Open and Engaged, a community discussion. And that is for leaders in our community.
And this is going to take place where?
We're not really, I know where it's going to take place, but it's an invite. We have to make sure that the right people are at the table.
Right.
So we can't just have everybody showing up going, hell yeah, free food. So it's coming out there, and there's invitations that are going to certain individuals in the
Gotcha.
community. You will get one. But we have to be very selective because this is not about getting together and just talking about the problem. This is about providing a solution to the problem right then and there.
So we're looking at creating that core group to get this going in our
Groups,
community.
10 of them.
Right.
We're looking at the people in this community that lead. And you do not have titles, I find out, don't mean anything.
Right.
You don't need a title to be a leader. In fact, more leaders don't have titles.
Right.
We need those people in the community that get things done, that can move mountains, that can influence people to get things done.
Like we were talking earlier, a leader is actually a person who makes everybody else better.
Exactly. And we want to make these families better.
Right.
And
the kids.
Yeah, the focus is the kids.
Right, because they're our future.
They are, yes, and it's so mind-blowing how we want to just keep throwing money at this problem over here when, yes, it's going to take longer, but if you could save a child, would you?
Absolutely.
Everybody would.
Right, and
Let's get
our
started.
whole focus with doing fire prevention is, even if I only affect one kid in that group, that to me that makes us successful in what we're doing. So if we can have everybody doing that, and then it keeps, it's kind of like the snowball rolling down the hill. the more people that keep doing it and the further it goes down, the bigger that snowball gets. And I think that's the same kind of concept that you're trying to help create in the community, be able to get that snowball effect out in the community. Let's help more than just one, and let's get everybody helping out 1, 10. Where does it go?
It's time to change the culture of Navajo County.
Right.
And to in the future be that county that everybody wants to move to, that has a booming economy.
And it all goes to that choice.
Yeah. And that's why we need to identify the leaders in our community.
Right.
We need to make sure that the right people are at the table, because this is not going to die. It's 10 task force. There's a housing task force, job training task force. There is a family support task force. I'm trying to think, a housing task force, a food task force.
So they're going to be specific in targeting certain areas that fit into those 5 areas that we're targeting.
This is working in New Mexico. Every county in New Mexico is doing this. They're smaller, they have a smaller base,
Right.
But if they can do it and they can organize people, there's no reason why we can't, because our children are the most important thing to us. And that's who I want at the meeting. I want people who care about the children in this community and who can get involved and who can roll up their sleeves. This is not, like I said, a sit down and let's talk about everything that we already know that we're dealing with.
No kumbaya going on?
No kumbaya. This is,
All right.
Here's the deal. We have the solution, let's implement it.
Right.
It's a discussion, definitely, and we're going to
Right.
be, but it's an all-day event. It's not an hour, it's not 2.
And it doesn't sound like it's something difficult.
No.
And I think maybe when people see it and understand the concept, and it's like, oh, this is doable.
If you're a leader in our community and you can influence change, you need to be there. That includes, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about this restaurant owner, and they're like, man, she does a lot of donations and a lot of grants to the place, and she works on these different coalitions, and she helps these people. I'm like, I'm going to give her an invite.
Right.
Because she's out there doing it. She's not, I don't want the people who talk. Oh, I do this and this. No, that's not personally, that's me personally, I'm coming out personal. I don't want those people. I want the people that do.
Right.
Because we're ready. And I'm super excited, because the best part of this is to know that we can fix it.
Right.
We can make this community better for everybody. And this could fall into Apache County. I already have people from Coconino County that are leaders there that want to come and get this information.
And why not? You know, because we're affected by all these other, just because it's a different county, you know, we are affected. We're a regional community.
So I need help, though.
Okay.
I need help in identifying these leaders, and I need help in finding which of these leaders are involved in the schools.
So we need people to contact you at the county health department, and email, phone call, whatever it takes, be the one to step up and volunteer for this.
Yes, because I'm going to be screening, we're actually all going to be screening the people in there. Like, they're going to come, and I'm going to look through, and I'll be like, okay, this, yes, vetted. This person's a doer. Come on in.
Right.
And that's important, because we're not messing around. You know, we have to,
Right.
or else we're going to continue to just be reactive and manage all the issues.
Right, and reactive's just not going to cut it anymore, is it?
No, because that's how fire prevention came about at first. We had to
Right.
react to all those kids.
Yeah, let's solve the problem by creating trying to fix what happened in the past, and
Yeah.
we can't fix the past.
No.
We got to look at the future.
And prevention is a huge part of that. So this, like I said, this will be a culture change. It'll be a phenomenal meeting. And if a leader misses it, they'll kick themselves the rest of their existence.
Well, this is awesome. I think that the direction you're headed is going to be very impactful. And like you say, if we get the right people in place, it's going to be huge.
We'll be unstoppable.
All right. Well, Allison, thank you again for coming on the show and sharing with us this important subject and topic. And I totally agree that we need to look at changing the behavior in order to be proactive. And we're going to share a link with some more videos. Please follow those links.
They're specific to what Dominic's doing in New Mexico, so people can see what he's
Awesome.
doing.
And because we want to even do better than New Mexico is, correct?
Yeah, well, we want the whole country to do this. We want the world.
All right. So thank you again for joining us on this edition of Safe and Sound. Hope to see you next month.